recognize this music, don't you? It's from Star Trek, a program which came out in 1966 and introduced us to the idea that space was the final frontier. Today, many scientists are of the opinion that the final frontier is not outer space. Today, many scientists are saying that the final frontier is inner space. Specifically, the final frontier is the mind. And the latest brain research suggests that your mind is like a starship. This research suggests that your thoughts are limitless fuel supply, and you are the captain of this mighty vessel. And under your command, your mind can take you where you have never gone before. This is a unique vision of the future that many scientists, many physicists, many neurologists, and quantum physicists have begun to reevaluate what they've known of the world as a result of advances in science and brain research. And as a result of this new research, they've come to the conclusion that what was once considered science fiction is now acknowledged as science fact. So there's some basic facts that we want to look at. Fact is that the average person uses 5% of their brain. Our brain processes 400 billion bits of information each and every second. And of those 400 billion pieces of information that are processed, we are conscious of 2,000 bits of information that are processed every second, which is the equivalent of a person being conscious, being awake, walking, talking, eating, drinking, doing all of those things that we do when we're awake, only doing them 1 hour of every day, and being comatose the remaining 23 hours of the day. That's what 5% of brain functionality means. So we have to begin to understand that we have the capacity to do so much more. Fact, scientists have discovered that 95% of the universe is empty space. And they refer to this empty space as dark matter. They don't know what it is, but they know that it's everywhere. And based on the study of atoms, they've also discovered that 95% of all atoms is also empty space, filled with this stuff, this unknown stuff, which they call dark matter. And as a result of new research that's been done, they found that they can manipulate this dark matter, or these particles within dark matter, with their thoughts. And so this new research is now causing scientists to begin to become aware of the unlimited potential that exists within the mind. And so it speaks to this whole issue of this book here and the DVD that was out a couple of years ago. What the bleep do we know? Scientists, experts are now acknowledging that we don't know half of what we thought we knew. And the more we study, the more we examine our environment, the more we come to realize how much we don't know. So, this idea can be expressed philosophically in the statement that we know that there are known knowns. There are things that we know we know. There are also known unknowns, things that we know that we don't know. But if we examine reality, we also have to come to accept the fact that there are unknown unknowns, things that we don't know, that we don't even know we don't know. So let me give you a metaphor to illustrate the scope of this new frontier of human potentiality. If the totality of human consciousness were to be condensed into a form, say water, then the totality of human consciousness would fill a thimble. These are the known knowns. This is what we know that we know. The known unknowns would be the equivalent of pouring a thimble full of knowledge into an 8-ounce glass. The unknown unknowns, the things that we don't know and don't know that we don't know, will be like taking that 8-ounce glass of water and pouring it into the ocean. So there is a great deal of information that scientists are now beginning to acknowledge that they are unaware of. With all the technology that they have, they've just begun to realize and publicly acknowledge that we don't know a fraction of what we thought we knew. Most of what we thought we knew is wrong, is incorrect. And so if we can put our egos aside for a minute, we can begin to realize that what we know today, what modern man knows today, pales in comparison to what was known in ancient times. And so this innate desire to know these known unknowns, or even the known unknowns, is really what The Secret DVD is all about. These are the issues that The Secret addresses. The DVD and the book help us begin to examine the larger aspects of our reality. And like the Da Vinci Code phenomenon 4 years ago, The Secret has captured the imagination of millions of people throughout the world who have seen the DVD or have read the book. And these people are now yearning to understand the hidden mysteries of life, the unknown unknowns. So it begs the question, with all the attention that's been placed on The Secret, it begs the question, what is The Secret? Well, essentially, The Secret is a movement which was created by this woman, Rhonda Byrne, last year. And it comes out, she is an Australian television producer. And she talked about how she came to this revelation of knowledge, which many people are embracing and considering to be the next revolution in human consciousness. The information in The Secret is being viewed as the reintroduction of ageless wisdom, the introduction of universal laws and principles which will allow the masses to begin to become the masters of their own destiny. That's the essence of what The Secret really represents. And on this 90-minute DVD begins with Rhonda Byrne, a burnt-out television executive, taking a vacation to reassess her life. Her father had just died. Her job was in jeopardy. Her relationships were in turmoil. And so she went on a short vacation, and as she was unpacking her suitcase, she found a book which her daughter had slipped in her luggage. And she described the effect that this book had on her. The book that she read was a book entitled The Science of Getting Rich, written in 1910 by Wallace D. Wattles. This is a book which essentially talks about how every human being has the right to be rich. And by being rich, he's not just talking about monetary wealth. He's talking about the capacity to develop the things that one needs in order to have a decent quality of life. Men need to have resources so that they can take care of their family, their household. Every person needs to have wealth, not just money, but knowledge, information, and opportunities to do the things that we were born here on earth to do. She was so moved by reading this book that it changed her whole perspective on life. And specifically, the book talked about how you can use your mind in order to create and generate riches by tapping into the powers of the universe. So she was inspired by this new perspective, and she did research on this book, The Secret of Getting Rich. She wanted to find out what were his sources for acquiring this knowledge. And she said that she spent about 2.5 weeks searching on the internet, reading a number of different books. And she claims to have traced the source of The Secret back to a document which was written in Egypt around 3000 BCE, a document which she referred to as the Emerald Tablet, which supposedly was written by a man by the name of Hermes Trismegistus. We're going to talk about him a little bit later. But this Emerald Tablet, this document, was said to contain the knowledge of the universe, the knowledge which men can use to understand themselves and understand the universe in which they live. Now, when I say men, I mean mind, conscious people, and that includes females, because the word man means mind. So, Rhonda Byrne, as a result of this research and as a result of this flood of inspiration that she gained from reading this book and going on this mental journey, she decided to come to the United States and interview 25 people here in this country who she said were practitioners of the secret. And these interviews became a part of the DVD documentary, which is one of the best-selling documentaries of its kind in the history of DVDs. Now, what's significant about this is that as a result of writing the book and the DVD, they have done numerous interviews. Rhonda Byrne and these teachers, these experts, have done numerous interviews in the newspaper and magazines. Many articles have been written about this phenomenon. But it wasn't until they appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show on February the 8th that the secret became a household word. And you know that whenever Oprah touches something, it turns into platinum. In this interview, Oprah asked Rhonda Byrne why she called the book The Secret, and why she called the book and the DVD The Secret. And Rhonda Byrne said that she wanted to appeal to people's desire to know secret or forbidden knowledge. She thought it was a good term, a good marketing term. And essentially what she did was to create a wonderful tool to help people begin to examine themselves, and she marketed it like no one has ever marketed information before. That's why it's appealed to so many people. As a result of the show that they did on Oprah Winfrey on the 18th, so many people called in, so many people emailed, so many people wrote letters that 8 days later, Oprah aired a second show entitled The Reaction to the Secret. And she had two of the teachers on the show. And one of the things that Oprah talked about throughout this second interview was how much she has been using the secret in her life, that she didn't know it was a secret. And she was really echoing the sentiments of probably millions of people who've been using this information, but there never was a formal name for it. Rhonda Byrne just gave it a name, gave it the DVD, and put it on the map, and now everyone is consuming it and talking about it. But the issue is, this DVD features a attention-grabbing dramatization. It's very skillfully done. It features this dramatization that depicts the secreting of the Emerald Tablet and the suppression of the secret thousands of years ago. It begins with, of course, it begins in Egypt. And specifically, it begins as Egypt is being invaded by foreigners. Within the temples of Egypt, the Emerald Tablet had been safeguarded for centuries by temple priests whose job it was to keep this information from falling into the wrong hands. And now that Egypt was being invaded, they needed to hide this information. And so a scribe was given the responsibility of making a papyrus rug of the Emerald Tablet. He makes the rug. He's frantically trying to complete this assignment before the invaders come in, and you see him scurrying around. He hears some noises, so he's trying to rush and finish his job. And then after he makes the copy, he then hands off the papyrus copy to an elder temple priest, who then instructs this young scribe to bury the Emerald Tablet in the shadow of the pyramids for safekeeping. Egypt is invaded by foreigners, and the secret is then smuggled out of the country where it's safe. This is the origin of the secret. Now, what's important to realize is that after the Emerald Tablet was buried, the secret literally went underground. The secret was unearthed by Knights Templars during the First Crusade, and it was coveted by these men who took this knowledge back to France with them. And through the study and application of this knowledge, they were able to acquire enormous wealth and power, which challenged the King of France at that time, as well as other kings in Europe and the Vatican. And so a decision was made to suppress this information. And essentially what happened was the secret knowledge was banned, and the Templars were destroyed. The Roman Catholic Church said we would not allow this information to be circulated within the general public. But the secret or fragments of the secret were already out there. And certain individuals rediscovered this information. And through the study and application of this knowledge, they were able to make profound discoveries which literally brought Europe out of the Dark Ages. In the documentary, Rhonda Byrne talks about the great thinkers, the great scientists and philosophers who discovered the secret and used it to rescue humanity. And they were the men who were part of the Renaissance, the rebirth of secret knowledge. And then she talked about in modern times, the secret is being suppressed. It's being suppressed by businessmen and politicians who have declared that this information can never be made available to the general public. And so a great deal of energy has been generated around keeping this information secret from the general public. So that begs the question, what is the secret of the secret? Well, based on the DVD, the secret behind the secret is the law of attraction. It is a basic universal understanding that everything in the universe is energy. Everything is energy. And all power is from within. Since energy is everywhere, all power is within, and therefore all power is under your control. And as a result of that realization, then what the secret has taught these individuals who have studied it is that what you think, what you feel, and what manifests is always a match. There is no disconnect. And in the DVD, the original version of the DVD, they talk about the emotional guidance system, which is the basic construct for the secret. The emotional guidance system identifies only two emotions: good emotions, good feelings, or bad feelings. That's all that exists. There are a range of emotions in between. They are either moving you toward good feelings or towards bad feelings. And one has to learn to monitor their feelings in order to understand what they are thinking. That then helps you understand what you are drawing to you in a universe that is based on the law of attraction. So whatever you think, whatever you feel, manifests. So that if you can monitor your feelings, then you can take control of yourself and generate positive thoughts. They talk about a 3-step creative process. The 3 steps in the creative process are to ask for what you desire. To ask for what you desire mentally. And they stress mentally because the universe responds to thoughts and emotions better than it responds to verbal requests. Your thoughts are more powerful than your words. Okay? So you have to ask for what you desire instead of asking for what you want. Because if you want, it means that you don't have it. And if you ask for what you want, the universe responds by saying, okay, you want this, I will see to it that you will continue to want this. I won't give it to you because you haven't asked for it. You say you want it, but you haven't demanded it, or you haven't specifically requested it in a manner that guarantees that you will receive it. The second point is to answer or to believe. That is, the universe answers all requests in time. It may not be in our time, but it's in the universe's time. And so you must be patient. And specifically, they said on the DVD that you must believe. You must believe that your request is going to be answered by the universe. And you must hold on to that belief because you are attracting that request to you from the universe. And the third point in this creative process is to receive. While you are waiting for your request to be fulfilled, you must bring yourself into alignment with that which you desire so that you can recognize it when it comes, because it may come in a form different than what you originally requested. So if you are open to what is coming, you will be able to identify it, you'll be able to feel it, and you will know when your prayers are literally being answered. The essence of all of this can be distilled in what is referred to as the law of attraction. The law of attraction is the basic force which functions throughout the entire universe. And the person responsible for doing a wonderful job in discussing the various aspects of the law of attraction was this woman here, Esther Hicks, who unfortunately, because she and Rhonda Byrne had a contractual disagreement, she was edited out of the extended version or the revised version of the DVD. So her comments, her thoughts of the law of attraction have been omitted. And I felt when I saw the original DVD that Esther Hicks and Michael Beckwith were the two most consistently spiritually grounded people in that original DVD. So now that she's been omitted, the soul of the secret is lost, in my personal opinion. But she has done a great deal of research talking about the law of attraction, she and her husband, and how this law works and how one can bring themselves into alignment, into harmony with these universal laws so that you can manifest what you desire. But the secret is significant because it is essentially a contemporary examination or introduction to timeless wisdom. But it's important for us to understand that it is not the final word. It's also important for us to realize that the secret is not new. Neither is it a secret. This information has been available in myriad forms for hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of years. And as a matter of fact, people have written about it. Wallace D. Wattles wrote about it. Other people have written about it. And the information is available to anyone who seeks it. It's available to anyone who learns to use it. It's available to anyone who has respect for the power that comes with the use of this knowledge and information. What's also significant is that this secret has been known by many different names over the years, and it's been written about in many different books. I want to share just several books which talk about the secret. There's a book, an old favorite, called The Kabbalah, written by the three initiates, which talk about Hermes Trismegistus, the person who is supposedly responsible for writing the Emerald Tablet. That book is a classic. There's another book that is a much more academic examination of many secrets. The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall, which was written in the 1920s. It's a thick book. It's a deep book. But you have to really commit yourself to internalizing the knowledge in this book. And what's so profound is that Manly P. Hall was in his 20s when he wrote this book. It's almost impossible for me to fathom how a person at that age was able to amass all of this information and put it in this book, which was written in the 1920s. Another classic that preceded The Secret is Deepak Chopra. Most of his material talks about secret information, talks about the universe and laws that function within and throughout the universe. So his book, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, is a good manual to help you apply secret knowledge within your life. There's a book that I discovered a few years ago. This particular book called Psycho-Cybernetics. It was written in the 1950s. It's been revised. There's a new book called The New Psycho-Cybernetics, but it deals with the same concepts, the same ideas. It's a little bit more academic. It focuses more on the psychological and the physical aspects of applying the secret in your life, but it's good information. If you read it, if you study it, if you apply it, you will achieve the same effects. My favorite secret book of all times is one that I was introduced to in the late 1970s, As a Man Thinketh, by James Allen. That book is my Torah. That is my book of life. It's a small book, less than 100 pages, but it has everything in it that The Secret has. You read that book, you study it, you apply the principles in this book in your life, and you will be able to manifest the things that you desire. So this information has always been available to us. The important thing about this is that all of these books talk about universal laws, how they operate, how they affect us, and how we can have a life of prosperity by applying these principles in our lives. These books and many others teach us that there's an aspect of the universe which functions like a magnet, and that we project our thoughts into this magnetic universe. And the universe amplifies our thoughts tenfold and then returns those thoughts to us infused with power. This is the world in which we live. Now, whether we will be empowered or disempowered is going to be determined by our awareness of the power of our thoughts. So if you don't know who you are, then you will do things that will cause you to live a life of misery. And the reality is that we are the creators of our destiny. That is who we are. That is the real secret. So in that context, much of the joy and the pain, much of the wealth and poverty, much of the health and disease that we experience throughout our lives is fueled by the thoughts that we generate and attract to us. We can't blame our parents, can't blame our wives or our husbands, our brothers or our sisters, can't blame the white man for the situations that we encounter in our lives, because we create the things that we attract to us. This is a profound truth which affects everyone, everywhere, regardless of race, nationality, or gender. It transcends religion, and it addresses our true identity as spiritual beings who are having a human experience. That is the essence of who we are. And as human beings, it's important for us to understand that as human beings, we all breathe the same air. We all see the same sun. We are all ruled by the same spiritual forces within the universe, whether we know it or not, whether we accept it or not. And so the important thing to understand is that most sources agree that this knowledge of the universe, the knowledge of who we are as spiritual beings having a human experience, was first codified and practiced in Egypt over 5,000 years ago. That is an accepted fact. It's important for us to understand that for over 3,000 years, the ancient Egyptians studied the secrets of the universe. And their research was stored in temples such as this, temples that were referred to as per-Ankh, or the houses of life. That is where the knowledge of the universe was stored. And these temples were places of higher learning. And within these temples, curriculums were developed, and this knowledge was taught to hundreds of generations of Egyptians who applied this knowledge throughout their lives for thousands and thousands of years. Egypt is the only civilization on earth that has endured for more than 1,000 years. And the history of Egypt is at least 3,000 years old. At least 3,000 years old. It's probably older, but we can say with certainty that it's at least 3,000 years. So these people knew something which we can't even imagine today. So it's important for us to realize that for over 3,000 years, the United States of Egypt was the brightest light in antiquity. This ancient country was originally called Kemet. Most of the names of African people, places, things, and secrets have been renamed by other people. Foreigners came from the four corners of the known world to study in Kemet, study the knowledge of history and science and philosophy and metaphysics. They then took that knowledge back to their homeland, where they became great thinkers, great scientists. Unfortunately, invaders came into Kemet too. First the Hyksos, then the Persians, then the Greeks, then the Romans, and then other invaders. Each invading army took secrets and fragments of secrets out of Africa, and they internalized this information as best they could, applied their knowledge in their own culture, lifted themselves up out of the Dark Ages, and became the creators of philosophy, of geometry, of medicine, science, you name it. But they acknowledged in their historical documents that it was in Egypt, it was along the Nile, where they first were introduced to this information. And so it's important for us to understand that we have been taught very little about the majesty of ancient Kemet. Instead, we've been fed a steady diet of misinformation about Egypt and old wicked Pharaoh. The current interest in the secret affords us an opportunity to begin to study ourselves, to study our history, and gain deeper knowledge of things that we were not supposed to know. And so, in that sense, the secret, the interest in the secret, affords us an opportunity to learn who we are and apply that knowledge in our personal lives. I've been blessed to have been studying the history of Kemet, or Egypt, for over 30 years, and have been doubly blessed to have traveled to Egypt 39 times over the last 25 years. I made my first trip to Egypt in 1980, and when I first went to Egypt, Egypt was much different then than it is now. If you look at this center photograph, this is me in 1980, December of 1980, we could literally walk into Haramaki, the so-called Sphinx. We could walk all around it. You can't do that anymore. On my second day to Egypt, I climbed the pyramid, myself and two other buddies. We climbed the pyramid at sunrise. Had an opportunity on my third day in Egypt to spend an hour inside of the pyramid all by myself. All right, that's enough. I spent an hour inside the pyramid in the dark all by myself. Right? And I had some incredible experiences while I was there. And so as a result of my interest in studying Kemetic history, it prompted me to begin to write about our story. It prompted me to begin to talk about the so-called stolen legacy, what we have not been taught in school. It has inspired me to try to diffuse the negative information about Egypt that we see in movies, on television, and in books on a regular basis. And so I've become something of a historical detective. And, I've traveled to Egypt so many times over the last 20-something years or so, and that I've spent a great deal of time researching, documenting the history, gathering evidence. And so I kind of feel like a crime scene investigator. So in the spirit of CSI, I want to submit to you this forensic analysis of the secret. Okay? You all with me? Yeah. All right, cool. So, I don't know the theme music for CSI, but imagine the theme music playing. All right, now, I want to examine the opening sequence of the Secret DVD. And I want us to use that as a visual time frame for what they're not telling you. And in order to do that, what I like to do is, in order for us to really understand what happened and understand that story, we need to have a timeline, because our references for understanding ourselves and our relationship to our environment is skewed because we don't know who we are. So I would want to give you all a timeline before I give my forensic analysis of the secret. So in order to do that, I need 5 volunteers. Can I have 5 volunteers? Just come on up. 5 volunteers. Come on up. Just 5, so. Okay. I'm going to give you all a sheet of paper. Now, what I want you all to do, each sheet of paper has a number on it, numbers on it. So I want you to look along the floor. The same number is on the floor. All right? So, a white spot right there. So, Shirley, you down here. And who are you? You're 30. You're down here. And you're down there. And you're at the very end. All right? What I'm creating is a visual timeline of history, stretching from 3,000, can you hold the numbers up so everybody can see them? From 3,000 BCE to 2007. And I want you all to take a mental picture of this timeline, because we're going to break down the opening scene of The Secret based upon this timeline. So, this is 3000 BCE, when The Secret was supposedly written, when the Emerald Tablet was written by Hermes Trismegistus, right? This is 332 BCE, when the Greeks invaded Kemet. This is 30 BCE when the Romans invaded Kemet and took it away from the Greeks. This is the year 0 when Jesus was born, and this is you all today in 2007. So this is your timeline. This is your timeline. So the Emerald Tablet was supposedly written in 3000 BCE. The dramatization in the secret begins at 30 BCE, when the Romans are coming in to take Egypt away from the Greeks, who've had it for about 300 years. So the Greeks then acquired and attempted to understand everything that had been created by Africans thousands of years earlier. This information is being presented to us. This information is being presented to us today in 2007. So if you don't know your history, if you don't know the timeline, you won't know how to understand or interpret the secret. All right? So now, if you all can take your tag with your number, there's some tape on the wall directly behind you, and tape it onto the wall. So we will have a permanent reminder, because I'm going to, just stick it on, just stick it on, just stick it on. Yep, just stick it on. Right. Try to make it as simple as possible. All right? All right, and have a seat. All right, so that is your timeline. I'm going to be referring to this timeline in my forensic analysis of the secret. Okay? You all with me?
Got you.
All right, good. So, I'll begin my analysis at the end of the dramatization in the DVD. All right? So just like at a crime scene, you begin at the scene of the crime. You gather your evidence, you analyze it, you go back into your laboratory, and you use this analysis to try to figure out when the crime was originally committed, who committed the crime, and then you go after the perpetrator. Make sense? Okay, cool. So, Egypt. The Emerald Tablet is buried in Egypt, as Egypt is being invaded by the Roman army. So we know the time frame is 30 BCE. The priests that we saw were Greek priests. They were Greek priests. They weren't Africans, which means that they have been in possession of this knowledge since 332 BCE, when Alexander of Macedonia conquered Kemet. Now, we saw the scribe, the young scribe, making a copy of the information on the Emerald Tablet for safekeeping. In order to keep this information, which they have been safeguarding for hundreds of years, they wanted to keep this information from falling into the hands of these invaders. This is information which they acquired from the Africans when they conquered them. And once they acquired that information, they've been analyzing it, because they didn't speak Medi-Neter, so they didn't know how to interpret the symbols. But they did the best they could to understand that, and it just so happened that in a dysfunctional world, their best was good enough for them to be the rulers of the world until the Romans came in and took everything away from them, and then applied that same knowledge, and that became the best for the rest of their life in running the world. All right? So, we see the scribe copying the information on the Emerald Tablet. Now, I want you to focus your attention on this image on the wall behind them, because that's the key. That's the key. That image is this image. It's an image of Jehuti. Who? Jehuti. Jehuti was the ancient Kemetic Neter who represented the process of divine articulation of speech. He was the Neter associated with speech, writing, thought, mathematics, science, measurement, and medicine. Okay? Now, if you look at this image, you'll see Jehuti is holding in his hand a tetragrammaton, right? And a tetrahedron, which is a six-sided triangle. this same image here. Triangle pointing up and a triangle pointing down. But what I also want you to note is that Jehuti is kneeling on an eye. Now there's a basic error in this image. Why? Because Jehuti was associated with the moon. And the symbol associated with Jehuti, the eye associated with Jehuti, was the left eye, this eye. But he's sitting on the right eye, which is the eye of Heru. Heru's eye is the right eye, which said to me that this image is inverted. Which also suggests to me that when the Greeks conquered Kemet in 332 BCE, the Kemetic priests were conquered, but they didn't give up all their secrets. They found skillful ways to hide the truth in plain sight. And if you take a symbol and invert that symbol, you change its meaning. It's just like your PIN number. You got 4 numbers in your PIN number. But if you're missing one number, you can't access the bank account. So the Greeks had the wrong PIN number. They weren't able to access the bank account in Africa. So they weren't able to get to the real secrets. They got stuff on the periphery, and that peripheral knowledge was enough to lift them out of the dark ages, but it wasn't the real deal. And we have to understand that. We have to be conscious of that so that we'll know how to interpret what is really there. So, what I want us to see and what I want us to understand is that Kemetic priests, after Kemet was conquered in 332 BCE, Kemetic priests, these conquered scholars, parceled out information to their Greek conquerors. And they parceled this information out in degrees. And the idea in this form of instruction was that I'm going to give you a little bit of this information, and your application of this knowledge tells me how much you really understand. And your understanding of this knowledge should be demonstrated in your speech and your actions. And because of the fact the Greeks were intellectually incapable of understanding the depth of African knowledge, the Kemetic priests limited the introduction which they shared to them. Because if you put power in the hands of a fool, you'll get wars in Iraq and wars in Afghanistan. You'll get the mess that we're experiencing right now. And so what I want us to understand that the Kemetic model for education, issuing information in degrees, is the model for the education, for the educational system that exists in the world today, and it is the model for the educational system that exists in Masonry today. So, for example, elementary school takes you up to the 8th degree or the 8th grade. High school takes you up to the 12th degree or the 12th grade. Bachelor's takes you up to the 16th degree. Master's is the 18th degree. PhD is the 20th degree. But the highest level in Masonry, in the Scottish Rite Order of Masonry, is the 33rd degree. The highest level in the York Rite Order of Masonry is the 13th degree. Now, it's important for us to understand that in Kemet, the priests in Kemet had 360 degrees of knowledge. But they only taught the Greeks less than 10% of what they knew. Okay? And with that 10% of knowledge, with that remedial education, the Greeks went on to become the creators of civilization for Europe. So we have to put that in perspective in order to understand the people who purport to be the greatest philosophers and scientists of all time. Their knowledge doesn't compare to the knowledge that existed 3000 BC and before. Okay? So, in this context, what we're dealing with the secret is information from this point in time in history. Remedial information. Remedial secrets. Not the real deal. Okay? So, let's get back to that scene in the dramatization and deal with that image on the wall behind the scribe. That image was the image of Jehuti. Jehuti was the nature or the personality who represented the process of divine articulation of speech. He was also the nature associated with writing. Divine speech. So if you understand the process, before you speak words, you must first formulate those words in your mind. So thinking precedes speech. And your thoughts and your words are expressed in what you write. So all of these attributes were associated with Jehuti. Now, it's important for us to realize that when the Greeks first started coming to Kemet around 500 BC, Pythagoras came somewhere around 500 BC and studied in Kemet for 23 years before he introduced the Pythagorean theorem to his people. It had already been developed and utilized in Kemet for thousands and thousands of years before he discovered it or rediscovered it. That's a more appropriate term. But it's important for us to understand that when the Greeks came into Kemet, they didn't understand all of the concepts. They couldn't speak the language, but they did the best they could. Right? They were kind of like, and this is not a pun, but they were kind of like the Hispanics who come over here. Can't speak the language, but they do the best they can. So, the Greeks refer to Jehuti, as Thoth. And it is from the Greek word Thoth that we have derived the word thought. Because this is the attribute associated with Jehuti or Thoth. Now, follow this sequence. When the Greeks conquered Kemet in 332 BCE, they Hellenized Jehuti, and he became known to them as Hermes, god of writing. Hermes, the messenger god. They also referred to Hermes as Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes the thrice great. So they're calling Hermes after his Kemetic name, and supposedly now this emerald tablet was written by Hermes. So it's written by a Greek god who was descended from an African nature. Now, when I examined this emerald tablet, I was struck by the fact that the writing of the emerald tablet is Phoenician and Greek. It's not Kemetic. It's not Kemetic. So it's not our information. It's someone else doing the best they can to interpret what preceded them by 3,000 years. And without the skill set to know the language, or the concepts associated with the language, or the philosophy associated with both, they got it bass backwards. Now, when Rome entered the picture in 30 BC and conquered Egypt, they changed the name of Hermes to Mercury. They Latinized his name. Same personality seen through 3 different cultures over a period of 3,000 years. Now, it's important for us to understand this and put it in the context of this timeline, because these same images are a part of our society today. We just don't have a historical framework with which to analyze it. So, you all are familiar with this man, the FTD man? That's Mercury. That's Hermes. That's Jehuti. He is the bringer of messages, whether it's flowers, whether it's love letters, whatever. And you see that the FTD man has wings on his head and wings on his feet, as does Mercury, as does Hermes. Represents swiftness of thought and swiftness of movement. Attributes that were originally associated with this African personality. All right? Now, you've seen this image? This is the caduceus. This is the symbol of medicine. You notice that the caduceus, Mercury is holding a caduceus. Hermes is holding a caduceus. This object is referred to as the staff of Hermes. It is a symbol associated with the healing arts, medicine. But it has an African origin. The temple of Abydos. There's this photograph of Jehuti holding in his hand, his left hand, 2 staffs. And there's a serpent wrapped around each of the 2 staffs. One staff has a serpent wearing the crown of Upper Kemet in the south. The other has the crown of the serpent wearing the symbol of Lower Kemet in the north. Symbols which represented geographically Upper and Lower Kemet, but also metaphysically, they also represented the upper and lower regions of the body, the upper and lower regions of the mind. This was a roadmap for you. This was a roadmap of your body. This is a symbol for who you are as a spiritual being having a human experience. So, it's important for us to know this history so that we can understand what it means. This symbol also represents well-being, balance, and harmony. The balance and harmony that it's talking about is the balance and harmony of the energy which flows from the universe into you through your body. And this energy has to be balanced. It has to be maintained. This energy, once it flows into the body, is broken down into two segments, which are represented by the two serpents, positive and negative energy, or masculine and feminine energy. Both are equally important. Both have to be in balance and harmony in order for you to experience health or freedom from disease, which is what the wings at the top of the caduceus represents. As a result of understanding this knowledge and applying this knowledge in your life, you are free from mental, physical, and emotional disease, and you can function as you were supposed to function. Now, the temple where this image was photographed is the temple of Abydos. Abydos is the oldest temple in Kemet, and archaeologists also agree that this is the oldest temple site in the world. The footprint of this temple can be dated back to over 4500 BC. Okay? So the more we study history, the more we find the role that African people have played in the development of all of those things which makes people civilized. So we have to understand that. How you all doing? Doing okay? Yeah. All right. Well, let's do this. Let's take a 10-minute break. Some folks need to go to the restroom. Let's give you a chance to digest what you've heard thus far. 10-minute break. It's 4:30 now, 3:30 now. We'll come back at 3:40, and we'll continue with the second part of the presentation, which is unlocking the secrets of the secret. Okay?